Is there value to character deaths? So in the Magic the Gathering story right now, a lot of characters are becoming these Phyrexianized planeswalkers. Phyrexians are the villains of the story right now. They basically are kind of like a combo of the Borg, where they turn living people into zombified artifact replications of themselves. Cybermen is also maybe a good example. But in this big epic ending to one of the largest epics in Magic storyline, we're in our endgame moment, a lot of the main characters are being turned into these evil versions of themselves, ostensibly dying. Characters like a Johnny, who historically has been one of the main mentor characters and heroes of the story, has become an evil sleeper agent assassin. Vraska, a character who has a relatively troubled past and has gone from being a villain to a redemption through becoming a hero, has once again fallen back just to a villain story. Nahiri, one of the more interesting, often on-again villain anti-heroes of the story, who's done as far as committed full-on genocide to being one of the main heroes in a story that we're following, is now once again a villain. Tamiyo, a fan favorite side character from a plane that up until literally the set that she was completed on didn't have any real characters to latch onto. If you didn't latch on to Tamiyo, was completed and has now been a lost member of kind of what the story can be moving forward. And so with any story, character death means there's a lack of story continuation that can happen with those characters. That's the death's meaning behind it. And there's a sentiment I'm seeing that these characters dying doesn't have meaning towards the story. Because character death can mean a lot of really wonderful things to a storytelling perspective, right? It gives motivation to characters. It creates tension. It creates stakes. It creates a reason that people are afraid of what's happening. It also brings emotion to the story. There's a reason we care about Pixar movies that make us sad significantly more than we care about DreamWorks movies that end with a dance number. I guess there are some good DreamWorks. Illumination is trash. Monster fans, get out of here. I know you're thirsty. So this is where I'm at. I think actually pretty much every character they've chosen is almost a safe choice in how the continuation of those character stories wasn't really happening beforehand and now gives a lot for them to do. The interesting about Phyrexian as well is that these characters aren't dead necessarily. Their hero-ness is dead. They are now a part of the villain group, but that doesn't mean they don't have more stories to tell about them, and there is an opportunities for redemption for them. There is a character called Malira in the game that allows you to heal or at least have Phyrexianized proof yourself against Phyrexianization. A few characters have that. Even now in the story, there's a hint that Malira and Nahiri are going to work together to try and prevent her from going full dark side, full Phyrexian, and keep her at least sanity as she goes through this. Now, I will say Nahiri becoming a villain or a part of Phyrexian offers an entire new interesting dynamic because she classically is a character that doesn't listen to anyone else. And when you throw that even into the orthodoxy that is the Phyrexians that have a religious vibe to them, her rebelling against Elishnorn and trying to take over the entire faction to herself is a real possibility. Vraska, who's also gone off and on rebellious leader in the past, is also in a really interesting relationship with Jace, who's one of the main characters who we've also gotten confirmation will be completed. And seeing the dynamic of two lovers being a completed pair and being villains together is something that could be really amazing. Another character who we basically have confirmation is the last to be completed that we haven't seen after Jace, basically has run out of stuff to do in the story, and this is something that adds a lot more dynamics to her. Up to this point, the last time we saw her, her little story was, well, I'm no longer in the Gatewatch, the organization that's this game's Avengers. What do I do with myself? I'm bored. The character that she had a romance with before this, Chandra, has gotten a new significant other, is dating someone on Innistrad, and that dynamic is no longer part of her story, sadly, because that's one of the big mistakes of the last big arc, but she doesn't have that anymore. She doesn't belong to the Gatewatch anymore. Her plane is relatively safe. In that story, they manufactured a conflict between her and Nahiri because Nahiri wanted to bring back the greatness of the core people from before that just ended with Nahiri failing and Nissa winning, and now kind of Zendikar's fine. What does Nissa do? But now that she's completed by the Phyrexians, she is going to overpower their grand plan of connecting all of the different planes together using the world tree. And she's a tree mage. She's going to overpower that tree for them. My thoughts in general is I think that the characters that are having these completion moments have real meaning. There's real emotion behind them, and they're not just there for shock value. I think when you take characters that you love and you do something terrible to them in this moment, making them into a villain mirror version of themselves, you want to use those in a valuable way, and I think that's what's happening here. I don't think any of these come off as flippant to me, other than maybe a few like Luca, but I feel like Luca was created to be Phyrexianized, and it is something that brings stakes to what's happening. How you guys feel? Is this something that feels really cheap? Do you feel like the different characters being completed are just there for shock value and something that doesn't have emotional resonance? Or is these deaths building emotional resonance within the story of Magic the Gathering in a way that really the story has never done before? Is it better for something like War of the Spark, where the only characters killed off in this momentum moment was one major character, one side character, and a third character who died off screen? Or is this a moment where it's happening blatantly in our face, something that builds stakes in a way that's interesting while also giving you a reason to care and fear for the characters and their lives?